As we celebrate June Dairy Month, the STtalks by STgenetics and Up-Level Dairy Podcast have banded together to shine a bright light on a collection of great dairy stories. We are rooted in the same core value to provide insightful information to the modern-day dairy producer and believe sharing these uplifting stories may motivate a new mindset or change for your own dairy story.
I'm Peggy Coffeen, host of the Up-Level Dairy Podcast, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
And I'm Laura Demmer, host of STtalks, which you can find on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and Deezer.
In this series, you will hear incredible dairy stories that follow milk along on a journey. From dairy farmers who are opening their doors and inviting consumers in for a seat at their table, to those who work behind the scenes to add value to every molecule of milk, and even a milk drinker who is fueling up to win the race of her life. That's what we have in store for you on STtalks and the Up-Level Dairy Podcast during the special June Dairy Month series.
And our guest today is Steve Shehadey of Bar 20 Dairy, located in Kerman, California. Steve and his family were early adapters of the sustainability efforts the dairy industry encourages, and today he is going to share with us how they have navigated this area of their business. Welcome to the podcast today, Steve. And just to get us started, can you share more about the start of Bar 20 and the incredible evolution that you've experienced?
Okay, yeah, Bar 20 started back in the 1950s. My grandfather, who was first generation, then my father, and then I'm third generation. I've got a daughter who's fourth generation who's studying dairy in college right now. But my grandfather was a soap salesman, and he lost his job when they sold his company, and so he didn't know what to do. So somehow he bought a little dairy processing plant where they bottled milk, and then this was in the late 1940s after the World War, and he said he wanted to sell Chevrolets, but everybody else wanted to do that too. So somehow he bought into this small dairy processing plant, and then after a few years he said, well, why should I get my milk from somebody else when I can do it myself? I can control the quality and not have to pay extra for the milk. So he started with a couple hundred cows, and then by 1960, he was up to about a whopping 300 cows, and then as the processing plant grew and they needed more milk, so did the cows. And so in 1970, he built a new facility that milked 2,000 cows, and at the time that was unheard of. That was a lot of milk and stuff. So, and then time evolved, and the producer's dairy kept needing more milk, and as they expanded throughout the Central Valley of California and up to the north, then they needed more milk. And so in 2005, we built our current facility, which is called the Bar 20 Dairy, Larry Shehadey Farms, in his honor, and we milk about 7,000 cows. Now, over time, we closed down the earlier dairies, so we have one facility, because with time changes and things become outdated, so we wanted to have the most efficient, environmentally friendly facility that we could. So in 2005, we built this dairy, and producers continues to grow, but at this time, we're satisfied with where we are with our cows. Times have kind of changed. It's not about milking more cows, it's doing more with what you have. And so that's how we evolved to where we are today. As times change, so do businesses. And in 1950, there was 25 million milk cows, and today there's 9 million. And so you got to do more with less. It's about being more efficient, with challenges with the environment and water and air quality and those sort of things. It's forced us to change the way we do business.
Yeah. And Steve, you said a lot in that introduction, and a few things that really jump out. Number one is an entrepreneurial spirit that runs through your veins, through your family, and through these generations of the dairy, and also innovation and sustainability. And here, in 2023, Bar 20 actually received the Innovative Dairy Farmer of the Year award from IDFA and has been recognized with U.S. Dairy Sustainability Awards as well. And now that you mentioned you're a third generation, you're looking at the fourth generation coming in with your daughter, and just paint the picture of why this idea of sustainability and stewardship, to use your words of doing more with less, why that means so much to you, your family business, and the future.
Well, first of all, again, I'm third generation. We got the fourth generation coming. We have, over 100 employees, and so my grandfather and father always preached, try to do the right thing, do what you think's right, And so we all live in this valley. We want to leave. When we leave it, we want it to be in better shape than when we got here and stuff. And so, doing the right things means, how can we use our resources to improve, right? We know California has serious water issues, and so, today dairymen use about 40% of their less water because they're coming from other agricultural byproducts like almond hulls and cottonseed and distiller's grain. Instead of having to grow that feed, we're able to use byproducts from other industries. And same thing with energy. Energy is one of our biggest expenses, and California, it's a challenge too sometimes to keep the lights on. With the push towards more electrification, we need energy, and so for us, our project with the digester was two things: to minimize our costs and be more efficient on energy costs, but to also then provide renewable energy and reduce emissions from methane, capturing that and turning something bad into something good like power that we can all use. And so that here we are. And one thing kind of led to other things. We started out with solar, and then we went to LED lighting, which reduced our lighting expenses, and then electrified our feed mixing, and then the digester.
And Steve, you've painted this picture of like such a great evolution and how much you have adapted and innovated and have changed at Bar 20. But you were truly kind of at the forefront of this environmental movement within the dairy industry. And you began working with a methane digester company back in 2007, which I think you had just mentioned. So how has this part of your business changed in the last 17 years? You explained great to us the history of Bar 20 up until the time that you built the dairy in 2005. But since this methane digester has started, what else has changed?
Well, back in 2007, when we heard about digesters, we thought, oh, that would be great. We can produce energy and reduce methane. But back in those days, I think there was a handful of digesters in California, and most of them were just sitting, not even being operated because of the efficiency. They were very expensive to run, and the price you get paid for electricity didn't cover your costs. So over time, I mean, it's been a team effort. I'm involved with a group called Dairy Cares, which is a group of processors and dairymen and industry in California. And I didn't know much about them. We picked a company to go with at that time that ended up going bankruptcy, Microgy. And so then we stumbled onto another company and then another one. And then through the Dairy Cares people, they took us to visit an actual working digester in 2013 and introduced us to the group that put their digester together. And probably the most important thing is to know what you know and to know what you don't know. And I didn't know much about digesters, so I wanted to deal with people that did. So a group called California Bioenergy, which today has over 100 digesters that are either operating or being built. But then you also got to look at it as a long-term deal. Ours is a 20-year project, right? So people you can trust, people that you are confident working with, and that help each other out. And so from 2013 to when we began producing energy in 2021, that's another 8 years. So nothing was easy. We had several failures along the way, and most digesters run or make renewable natural gas from the pipeline, but our challenge was we didn't have a pipeline that was close to us, and the closest one couldn't take all of our gas. So we were kind of stuck with electricity, and at the time, generators produced emissions, your NOx and your SOx, and harmful emissions that the air quality people didn't like. So Cal Bio introduced us to Bloom Energy, which has these fuel cells. And what a fuel cell does is it basically takes the methane and through non-combustible means produces chemical reactions that create energy, which goes into the grid. It's kind of like solar. It just hooks up to the grid, and then you kind of net meter what you use. And what we liked about this, though, is solar is great when the sun's out and it's hot, but when it's nighttime and it's raining and the clouds are out, it's not always doing it, but this is a solution that's 24 hours, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. It's always producing power. So for us, it's been a great deal. And we between our 2 megawatts in solar and the digester, we produce much more power than all our farming and dairy operations use together. So we're actually putting excess back into the grid.
Wow. Well, that's definitely something to be proud of as a business, is being able to put more into the grid than you take out, and a great sustainability story. But also, as you shared with us, it's been a lot of evolution and learning lessons along the way, from the implementation of digester from the beginning in those early years, also adapting solar and having that as part of your system. And now fast forward more recently here, you've been involved in a pretty unique collaboration with BMW North America and California Bioenergy. So can you tell us a little bit about what this partnership is, how it came up, and what the goals of that are?
Yeah, well, California has a program called the Low Carbon Fuel Standards, which generates revenues for these type of projects by the gas companies and other polluters have to buy these credits to offset the pollution that they're making. And so BMW generates these electric vehicles, and so they were one that had to purchase these credits. So they thought, well, let's invest in dairy. We're reducing the methane, and so CalBio reached out through broker or whatever, and they were extremely interested because these projects are very expensive. And we got some money from the bank, we got some money from California Food and Agriculture. We got a grant there, and needed every bit of it to make this thing happen. And BMW's belief in our system and wanting to help in a way help finance our project, because their revenues help us to pay the bank back. Which, if we don't pay the bank back, then we got other problems.
Very true. So Steve, you had kind of mentioned before how your digester is maybe a little different than most. When you made this change and how you're getting this energy, did you have to make changes to your digester? How did that change go from the digester you originally put in to what you are using today?
Well, the digester was built about the same time, and but throughout the planning process, we went with this fuel cell. So what the digester is it's a big giant covered lagoon. Holds 25 million gallons of wastewater, and it's just basically covered, and that's what a digester is. And so most digesters are similar, but then it's what you do with that methane when you capture it. And a lot of them are doing renewable natural gas for transportation. That's probably the most popular way. And then a few have generators which create electricity. Well, what makes ours different is the fuel cell. We were the first in the world to create power with a fuel cell, which is a little cleaner and more efficient, but also more expensive. And so anytime you do something as the first of its kind, there's always challenges, and we had to deal with COVID and supply chain issues and all that stuff. It took us about a year to get everything figured out, and since then it's been working great. Now we had extra methane. The fuel cell couldn't take all the methane, and so we have some extra. So along the way, we were in contact with a company called H2B2, which came to us and wanted to lease some ground for solar so they could produce green renewable hydrogen transportation fuel. And so along the way, I said, well, we've got this biogas. Could you use some of that? And the more they learned about biogas, the more they liked it. And so instead of doing about 40 acres of solar, they're going to take all our extra biogas instead of letting it go up into the air, and they're going to use that to burn a generator and create renewable electricity for their hydrogen transportation fuel. And as far as we know, that's also the first of its kind. So we're taking what we have and seeing how we can best utilize it and stuff. And so they'll have a portion of their green hydrogen coming from biogas and a portion from solar. So and that should get rid of all the methane from the wastewater ponds.
Wow. And Steve, it sounds like you haven't been afraid to be first when it comes to innovation and new technologies, to new territories that other dairy producers had not entered before. Do you enjoy the challenge? What is it that makes you willing to take that risk of being on the front side of sustainability and truly investing in that?
Well, and normally we're usually not the first that wants to try anything new just because of the challenges and stuff. But whether it's not knowing any better or really believing and trying to invest in our future, because again, it's not milking more cows anymore. It's doing more with what you have, and how can you maximize whether it's waste. Somebody said when you got lemons, make lemonade. Well, I guess when we got cow poop, we can make energy. So, you know, we're not looking to milk more cows. We're looking to maximize, what can we do with using less water, or what can we use with the manure? Like we can make good fertilizer, because there's new regulations for California for water, and it's about everybody's going to have to use less. And so, how can you do that? And like I said, I got a fourth generation coming into the business, and our family lives in this valley, and we've got 3 other siblings and 4 cousins, and we're all third generation, and we've probably got 20 fourth generation around here that we all live here, and we all want to do with what we can. So our milk goes to feed thousands of people up and down the valley, and now we're powering some of their electric vehicles or running their ACs with our dairy biogas.
Yeah, isn't it incredible that really your family business and legacy started out as feeding the community in the area, and now it's really truly powering them, powering their vehicles and being a part of their own sustainability stories, not just the milk on their table. And you mentioned, once again, looking at the future and that fourth generation. And so as you look at that, and let's call that generational sustainability, what are some of the other efforts that we haven't touched on yet in this conversation that you are looking at the future to make sure that Bar 20 continues to be sustainable environmentally, but also sustainable as a generational family business?
Yes, again, my daughter's a senior at Cal Poly in California, and we've had her work out at the dairy farm in the summer, and she's also had her work at a digester company to learn about sustainability. And so we've taken her to sustainability conferences, because again, it's not just milking cows anymore. It's being a good steward of your environment and learning all that you can. And again, I've been fortunate to be a part of Dairy Cares, which has great people, great resources that know a lot more than I do about stuff. But and then again, people, reaching out, talking to people. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should be listening more than we talk. And so I try to constantly learn something new. My grandpa said, if you learn one thing new a day, then at the end of the year you've learned quite a bit. So, and he was just a high school graduate that grew up in the Depression. So, but he said, the minute you think you know everything, you're in trouble. So try to live by that and constantly try to get better.
So Steve, do you have any other plans in motion in the back of your mind, or maybe even on paper, that you want to implement at Bar 20 to expand this generational sustainability that Peggy had mentioned?
Yes, we are actually. We've been working with some other dairymen and looking at growing feed indoors, like a controlled environment type feed. And there's been some companies that have tried to do this, and it's a challenge. But a company called Forever Feed, which has been working at this for the last few years, and a pretty interesting concept where you can take and grow feed in a building and use 5% of the water that you would to grow your corn silage or your alfalfa, and you don't need any fertilizers. You're just using the seed and water, and controlling the temperature. And again, if in our case we've got excess renewable power that we could use to control this environment and produce a feed that's consistent and high quality, and reduce a lot of diesel emissions too, because when you grow your hay, you got to cut your hay, you got to go back and rake it, you got to bale it, you got to move it into stacks, and then from the stacks you got to move it over to the feed area. So there's a lot of emissions in that process. And so if you can have something right there at your feed area that produces feed on a day basis that's fresh, it sounds very, very interesting. Now, we're ways off before we see if it works or not, but just talking to people and other dairymen, and it's a company that's listed. It's got a lot of input from actual dairymen that are milking their cows and feeding their cows, and what do they want? It's, again, they're kind of listening. It's a group that's listening to what dairymen want, and one of the key guys is an actual dairyman, Jack DeYen. And so it's interesting. We're not there yet, but they're in the process of building a prototype and putting it on a farm and running trials and seeing where it ends up. But if it does, it could be a game changer.
Wow. So Steve, I'm sure you're always looking towards the future, but with your forward thinking cap on right now, do you foresee a day when a dairy can be completely self-sufficient off of one of these indoor vertical feed growing systems?
I don't know if it would be 100% sufficient, but I think by feeding byproducts that are in the local communities, it would greatly reduce the water usage and reduce a demand for feed. But after what I've seen the last 20 years and the technologies these that are coming available today, from using worms to clean manure water to other exciting technologies, it's exciting. Again, when something becomes an issue, you look at all the resources are put towards it. A lot of positive things can happen.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of problem solving that have led to this series of innovation. And Steve, when you really think about this rich history of sustainability that Bar 20 has, and if you were to put your finger on a point in time where you pulled the trigger on a decision that had the greatest impact on your dairy's sustainability story, what would that moment of time have been?
I would say that's a tough question because there's so many little things along the way. There's not just one solution to any problem. Like for us, the digesters made sense because we're a bigger dairy, and with the grants that were available and the resources that we were available to. But the first thing we did was put it in solar. We started the digester 15 years ago, but along the way we were doing a lot of other little things like the feed mixer and changing out the light bulbs and trying to be more water efficient in the way we irrigated and capturing water. So it's a lot of little things for each dairyman. There's different opportunities, and digesters work for us, but for a smaller dairy, there's a lot of resources going towards the enteric emissions, the front end of the cow, and through genetics and through some of these new additives that they're pretty excited about. You could reduce the emissions maybe 30% from the front end of the cow, not just the back end. And so anything we can do, even the feed area, less spoilage and making your silage more efficiently. There's a lot of little things that make up 100 pennies make up $1. And so every little thing you can do, because you can't always try to hit a home run or you might strike out a lot, but along the way there's things that you can do that because the dairy business is great sometimes and it's really bad other times, and so you just got to try to get through the bad times and again try to do the best you can. And again, we've got great people that work at our dairy, and we do it for them too and their families. We've had people over 40 years that have been here, and seeing their kids grow up, and so it's kind of a team effort. But digesters, still being remain to be seen if that's going to be it. But we've put a lot of resources into it, and it's doing what it's supposed to do now. And so, as far as cost savings and efficiency, probably that'll be the biggest decision that we made.
I think that was an excellent comparison. Just all of these small efforts really can have a large movement, and I think that is very evident in the evolution of Bar 20 and what your family has worked to achieve. And as you know, Bar 20 and your family have really stuck your flag in this environmental movement. There are so many dairy farmers out there that are looking to enter this innovative sustainability space, but they just maybe don't know exactly where to start or what would be the best decision for them to make. So what would be your key piece of advice to other producers out there that are just starting out their sustainability movement on their own?
I would say the number one thing again is know what you know and know what you don't know, and try to find a good partner. Because a lot of these projects, in our case, we got a 20-year relationship with CalBio now. Somebody that you can trust and can help you. Because, I mean, I know the dairy and we know our cows, but we didn't know what makes a digester work. And you find a good partner, and there's lots of them out there. But just look at it as like a long-term relationship, and doesn't always mean it might be the cheapest one, but you want something that's going to be around for 20 years. And again, right now, they were the ones that came up with the fuel cell, and I didn't know what a fuel cell was, but finding good people, and even on our dairy, right, we're only as good as our milkers and our feeders and everybody there. So surround yourself with good people and don't give up, because everybody has failures. Again, my grandpa used to say, if you haven't failed, you're not doing anything. So, yeah.
Sounds like your grandfather was a very wise man.
Yeah, him and my father both, and again, I'm trying to instill those qualities into my kids too. That's the hard part. I had some big shoes to fill, and trying to keep it going. So again, we believe in the dairy. We love the dairy industry. Probably the best people you could ever meet, good, hardworking people, and I'm no different than anybody else about keeping things going and passing something that we really enjoy doing on to the next generation.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for joining us today and sharing about Bar 20 and your family's legacy within this sustainability movement within the industry. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Steve. And if you like what you've heard today and want more of it in your ear every week, please take a minute to follow Up Level Dairy Podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
And STtalks on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and Deezer. Or you can learn more about STgenetics by visiting our website at stgen.com. Thank you so much for joining us as we celebrate June Dairy Month. STtalks and Up Level Dairy Podcast are proud to bring you these incredible dairy stories and hope you join us for the next one launching tomorrow.